Tonight's presentation of great interest to the students, a large crowd tonight. Talk a little bit about why the Cuban Missile Crisis for a historical presentation this fall.
Well, 50th anniversary of the Kennedy administration has really always been an interest of mine, going all the way back to when I was in elementary school. The first, I think, going into Miss Brady's second grade class, one of my first memories is picking up this book on Cape Canaveral, and it discussed the space administration, discussed Kennedy, and so I've always had a fascination with the Kennedy administration, going all the way back to my younger days. But one of the things that the Kennedy administration, the Cuban Missile Crisis does, is it's sort of it's an excellent example of problem solving. If you look at if you go back and you take a look at XCOM, which was the committee that Kennedy had pulled together of cabinet officers, cabinet officials, military officers, and such, one of the ways that they made decisions was based on what they believed that the Soviets would do. So in sort of projecting those possibilities, I think they were able to save hundreds of thousands of lives in very careful decision making. So I think this is a really important activity. This is a really important anniversary, and something that students should pay serious attention to.
And the way you both present it, by going to the documents and reading the words of the men, it gives a certain gravity to the situation that this generation, who is accustomed to seeing live news, I think perhaps can get some import from.
Absolutely. It's what fascinated me about reading the respective letters and the communications, that this took place with telegrams and yes, letters, and the way the communications had changed dramatically in 50 years. These issues are pertinent today. Foreign policy still matters. It still matters on the world stage. And for me, as a historian, I was interested in the personalities. The fact that Khrushchev and Kennedy were literally trying to size each other up. And they had met each other the year before. There had been the Bay of Pigs invasion a year before as well. Khrushchev, I think, underestimates Kennedy, and this is a process that Dr. Pellegrin talked about, where Kennedy and his team really made some rational decisions, some measured decisions, and avoided what could have been a real incident with the quarantine, and even worse, a decision, as Khrushchev was saying in his letters to Kennedy, that some of the discretion was left to people on the ground. And that to me very much determined who could have pushed a button or started a conflict that you don't get a chance to take back a missile when it's fired. So the stakes were incredibly high, and it was a staring contest, and it literally came down to who blinked first.
Well, and tonight, you know, we even saw an illustration of one of the questions from the crowd, where it still lives in the memory of certain people today, and the reaction and the visceral sort of feel for this. You know, obviously, there's a lot of talk about foreign policy and the world stage today. Again, for the students that were here, giving them a little perspective, I assume, was one of the big goals tonight.
It absolutely was. Going through this, using the primary source documents, looking at the speeches. Hopefully, we provided students tonight with an excellent example of sort of what historians do. We go to the primary sources. So,
I totally agree. This is something we started last year with the Lincoln-Douglas debates. We're going to continue them in the future. This hopefully is a yearly occurrence, and we really get to see major issues and how words are exchanged by leaders and how they matter. And this is something that we don't live through the same way today. The idea of a Cold War that some of us remember the very end of it, some of us remember like our parents getting under desks for drills, and so it's very important to go through it and talk about the history in some detail.
And about the letters themselves, I mean, the letters are just so very carefully crafted, and if you take a look at Khrushchev's letters, and he's in a way very unrepentant, saying we did this, we did this with the Cuban people. These missiles are for their defense. So in a way, he can in a way back down, and still not appear to be contrite in what he did, and plus to the fact he has to deal with the Presidium, which will essentially oust him almost a year and a day from the Cuban Missile. Well, take back 2 years in '64.
I would just add that I loved in the letters that Dr. Pellegrin was reading that he Khrushchev, the premier of the Soviet Union, is aware of the American elections in 1962. As of course Kennedy would have been. Now he does not mention them, but Dr. Pellegrin and I talked about this in preparation for this event. It's on every politician's mind in Washington, the Democratic Party, even the upcoming election in 1964. Kennedy doesn't mention it in the text that we chose, but Khrushchev is very aware of it. He's now dealing with his second U.S. president, and again, this matters to him. The way he is seen to deal with this situation is from a position of weakness, and it costs him at the end.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.